Welcome, and thank you for being here with me today. Please stick around until the very end and let me know in the comments which city you are listening from. The story I am about to share completely reshaped everything I thought I knew about family, success, and the true cost of staying silent. My mother called 3 days before Christmas. Her voice carried that meticulously rehearsed quality she always used when her mind was already made up, but she still needed to go through the motions of asking for my input. She said, "Claire, I think it's best if you don't come home to Houston for Christmas this year. Things are just very tense around here right now, and having you around will only make everyone uncomfortable." I stood in the kitchen of my Austin, Texas apartment, holding the phone tightly against my ear. The calendar on the refrigerator read December 22nd. 3 days until their picture-perfect holiday, and 3 days until my third consecutive Christmas spent completely alone. "I understand, Mom," I said quietly. Just those few words. At 38 years old, I had finally learned my lesson. Arguing with her only made things worse, providing fresh ammunition she would inevitably weaponize against me later. What my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 72 hours, my face would be broadcast across every major financial news network in the country. They were about to find out exactly what kind of empire I had quietly built during all those years they shut me out. The call lasted less than 4 minutes. Eleanor Sterling was always highly efficient when delivering disappointing news. She explained that my younger sister Chloe and her investment banker husband Blake were going through some severe marital issues. Having an outsider in the house would only add to the pressure. She suggested we all get together sometime in January instead, once things settled down. An outsider. That was the term she used for her oldest daughter. An outsider. I didn't interrupt. I just listened to her excuses. I had heard variations of this speech for years. Different holidays, different prepositions, but always the exact same conclusion. Claire doesn't fit in. Claire makes things awkward. Claire needs to keep her distance. "Well," she sighed as she finished, "I knew you'd understand. You've always been the reasonable one. The reasonable one." That was her favorite phrase to dismiss me. It implied my silence meant consent, as if my refusal to scream and shout meant I was perfectly content being pushed away. "We'll call you Christmas morning," she added, treating it like a casual act of charity. "And Claire, if Chloe reaches out, please be kind to her. She's under an immense amount of pressure lately." The line went dead before I could even reply. No, "I love you," no "Merry Christmas." Just a direct order to be kind to the sister who had spent the last decade ensuring I was completely locked out of the family. 23 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. She never missed an opportunity to twist the knife. "Mom told me she called you," the text read. "To be honest, it's probably for the best. You always make things so uncomfortable, Claire. You just sit there judging everyone while contributing absolutely nothing to this family. Maybe you can use this time to actually think about your life, get a real job, or find a decent man to marry. Just a thought. Merry Christmas." She ended the message with a red heart emoji, as if that could somehow soften the malice of her words. I read the text twice, letting the words sting against old scars that had long grown accustomed to the pain. Chloe was 34, married to a Wall Street elite who looked at financial spreadsheets with more affection than he ever showed his wife. They had 2 kids, a massive mansion in Houston's wealthy River Oaks neighborhood complete with a wine cellar and a 5-car garage, and she ran a high-end interior design firm entirely funded by our mother. She was the absolute embodiment of our mother's ideal daughter. I, on the other hand, was the family cautionary tale. The sister who walked away from an executive position at the family's commercial real estate empire to chase an elusive dream centered around green building materials. The sister who chose ambition over a wedding ring. The sister everyone stopped asking about during family dinners because my answers could never measure up to their standards. I typed out a reply. "Thanks for the concern, Chloe. Merry Christmas." Then I deleted it. I tried another one. "I'm doing better than you could ever dream of." I deleted that too. In the end, I sent nothing. Silence had become my only weapon, and I wasn't ready to give it up just yet. I placed my phone on the marble countertop and looked around my apartment. Located in downtown Austin, it was spacious, minimalist, and immaculate. It featured an Italian leather sofa I had chosen myself, and a large walnut desk stacked high with patent documents and experimental data. The kitchen smelled of pour-over coffee, high ambition, and deep solitude. There was no Christmas tree, no decorations. Celebrating alone felt entirely pointless. Against my better judgment, I opened social media. Chloe's profile sat right at the top of my feed with a brand new post from that afternoon. The photo captured the living room of her Houston mansion, decorated to perfection by a professional crew. A massive fir tree was dripping with crystal ornaments, and the fireplace glowed with an amber warmth. Her family was gathered on a matching, custom beige sofa. Eleanor sat right in the center, her makeup flawless and her smile pristine. Blake had his arm around Chloe, and the children wore coordinated holiday outfits. Everyone was together, except for me. The caption read, "Pouring my heart into Christmas Eve preparations. Beyond grateful for family, love, and the traditions that truly matter. #blessed #family is everything." The post already had over 500 likes, and the comment section was overflowing with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Beautiful family. Living the absolute dream. You are so blessed, Chloe. Pouring her heart into it. That's what she wrote. I wasn't in that photo. I wasn't in her heart. And the worst part was that I had long stopped expecting to be. I closed the app and walked over to the refrigerator. Affixed to the stainless steel door were 14 drawings, held in place by magnets shaped like Texas Longhorns. They were crayon drawings of stick figures with wild curly hair and bright smiles, pink and purple hearts, and rainbows stretching over houses. Every single one was from Mia, my 9-year-old niece, Chloe's daughter. She had mailed all of these drawings to my office in envelopes with no return address, completely hiding it from her parents. A 9-year-old girl, carefully concealing her love for her aunt like contraband. I traced the edge of one drawing. It showed Mia and me holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Underneath, in crooked handwriting, it said, "I love you, Aunt Claire. You are my favorite person." She had been sending these for 3 years. Birthday cards, holiday wishes, and little notes saying, "I miss you," or "I wish you could come visit me." Chloe didn't know, or if she did, she pretended not to. Either way, Mia had learned at a very young age that loving me was a secret she had to keep. That broke my heart far more than any excuse my mother could ever manufacture. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. The screen lit up, revealing an email sitting right at the top of my inbox. It was from Richard Stone, the Chief Executive Officer of Earth Global Capital. The subject line read, "Final signatures. Congratulations, Claire." The message was brief. The board has officially approved the acquisition. $920 million for your 40% stake. We will execute the final documents via encrypted video conference tomorrow morning. Welcome to your next chapter. I stared at those lines for a long time. My family thought I was playing in the dirt out in the middle of nowhere. They believed I had wasted my Ivy League education, throwing my bright future away on a startup destined for bankruptcy. They had absolutely no idea that while they were excluding me from Christmas dinners, birthday parties, and Thanksgiving gatherings, I was engineering a revolutionary building material capable of withstanding Category 5 hurricanes while absorbing carbon emissions from the atmosphere. They had no clue that the moment I signed those documents tomorrow, I would become one of the wealthiest self-made women in the state of Texas. They didn't know because they had never bothered to ask. My phone buzzed again with another notification, this time from the Media Relations Department at the Wall Street Journal. The subject read, "Exclusive interview request. Acquisition feature. We want to feature you on the cover as the most influential woman in American green technology." I closed my laptop and looked out at the Austin skyline. They thought I was nothing. In 72 hours, the entire world would know my name, and my mother would call me with a trembling voice, finally asking the question she should have asked years ago. "Is that really you?" I couldn't sleep at all that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling as my mother's phone call and Chloe's text replayed in my mind like an endless loop of background noise. But beneath those fresh wounds, much older scars began to throb. A deep pain that had nothing to do with this specific Christmas, but rooted in the last decade. People often ask me when my family stopped loving me. The truth is, I don't think they ever stopped, because they never truly started. At least, they never loved who I actually was. They loved a concept, a quiet, submissive, perfect heir who would follow the script they wrote. The moment I tore that script to pieces, I became a complete stranger to them. I reached over to my nightstand and picked up a small walnut box. Inside lay a worn engineering parchment journal, its edges softened from years of handling. Opening to the very first page, I looked at my father's handwriting. To understand why this journal mattered so much, you have to understand exactly what I gave up and the price I paid for it. 11 years ago, I was 27, sitting in a prime corner office at our family's commercial real estate firm in downtown Houston. I was next in line for a vice president position, earning an enviable six-figure salary while managing development projects worth tens of millions of dollars. I had become exactly who my mother wanted me to be: responsible, stable, and secure. But every single day in that office felt like drowning in slow motion. I would sit around the mahogany conference table, listening to executives plan how to bulldoze wetlands in the Houston suburbs for cookie-cutter luxury apartments, while my mind drifted to the notebook hidden deep inside my desk drawer. That notebook was filled with formulas for new carbon-negative polymers, weather disaster resistance ratings, and sustainable urban designs. I researched in secret for 2 entire years, testing hundreds of material combinations that could keep buildings standing through extreme weather at a fraction of the traditional cost. The science completely consumed me, and the potential to reshape human construction kept me awake at night. Then I received a phone call from Professor David Vance at MIT. He was my former mentor, and the first person to see a potential in me that I hadn't even recognized myself. "Claire," he told me, "I've secured a lab space for you at the Green Tech Incubator in Austin, along with some initial seed funding. Your material formulas are exactly the breakthrough we've been looking for, but you have to commit full-time and risk everything. It's now or never." That afternoon, sitting in my high-end Houston office, his words echoed in my mind. It's now or never. I knew exactly what I had to do. I walked straight into my mother's top-floor executive suite and placed my resignation letter firmly on her mahogany desk. She looked up, staring at me as if I had completely lost my mind. "You are making a massive mistake," she said, her voice dropping to a freezing chill. "If you walk out that door, you are nothing." "I know you don't understand, Mom," I replied quietly, "but this is the path I have to take." I didn't feel brave in that moment. I felt utterly terrified. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was choosing my own direction, instead of just coasting along the tracks someone else had laid down for me. I packed up my desk and checked my phone. A text from Chloe was already waiting. "Mom said you quit? Are you insane? What is wrong with you?" I didn't bother replying. I already knew exactly what kind of welcome awaited me at home. The drive back felt miles longer than usual. I spent the entire time rehearsing what I would say, practicing how I would explain my vision, my laboratory data, and the sheer potential this material had to save countless families and structures during severe hurricanes. I pictured them listening, actually listening, and finally understanding who I was meant to become. I never even got the chance to deliver that speech. Before I could even sit down, my mother started. "I heard about what you did," she said, standing in the grand foyer. Her voice was sharp, her eyes hardened. "Tell me it isn't true, Claire." "Mom, just let me explain." "Explain what?" "Explain that you threw away a flawless, guaranteed career I spent half my life building for you, all for some ridiculous fantasy? Do you have any idea how many strings I had to pull to secure your position in this company? And you just walk away?" She looked down at me, arms tightly crossed, letting her anger wash over me like a wave. "What are you going to do now? Go fiddle with chemicals in some rundown garage? Start some so-called eco-friendly company that will go bankrupt in 6 months?" I tried to speak, but she kept firing. "I raised you better than this, Claire. I taught you to be practical, to be smart, and to look out for the future of this family, and you throw it all away to go try and change the world?" Chloe sat on the leather sofa in the living room, watching the entire spectacle with a faint, mocking smile. She was 23 at the time, newly engaged to Blake, and already flaunting her massive diamond ring like a trophy. "I always knew Claire thought she was too special for a normal life," Chloe chimed in smoothly. "Some people are perfectly content with money and status, but apparently we have a saint in the family." She spat the word saint like a bitter insult. Meanwhile, extended relatives were frantically messaging back and forth in the family group chat, the one group chat I was actively excluded from. "Did you hear about Claire? How tragic. Talk about throwing away a perfectly good hand." I sat there and didn't say a single word. My family dissected my choices like they were analyzing a failed experiment. My mother listed every single sacrifice she claimed to have made for me, while Chloe counted every way I had managed to let them down. I kept my mouth shut, knowing that no matter what I said, they would never actually hear me. Amidst the entire interrogation, only one person remained completely silent. My father, Arthur. He sat in the corner of the sofa, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When the storm finally passed and everyone drifted away, he caught my arm in the hallway. "Come with me," he whispered. "Let's talk." We walked out to the backyard tool shed, his personal sanctuary, which was piled high with old blueprints and woodworking equipment. It was the same place he had taught me that the world was so much bigger than our elitist social circle in Houston. Under the stifling heat of that windless Texas summer night, my father gave me the words I had spent my entire life waiting to hear. "Tell me about your real idea, Claire," he said. "Not the watered-down version you plan to use to keep your mother calm. Tell me everything." "So," I told him. I explained my polymer formula, its incredible elasticity under extreme pressure, the data proving it could replace traditional concrete while absorbing carbon dioxide, and how it could secure affordable housing for coastal families living in hurricane zones. By the time I finished, his eyes were wet with tears. "Your grandmother, my mother," he began, his voice raspy. "She was living in a low-income neighborhood in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit. Her house collapsed and she never made it out." He paused, his eyes heavily bloodshot. "Claire, if you can build the material you just described, you can save people just like her. You can save thousands of families." He reached out and squeezed my hand, the very same hand that used to hold mine when I was a little girl terrified of thunderstorms. "Don't listen to your mother," he urged quietly. "And don't listen to Chloe. They are terrified of things they cannot control or understand. You have a fire inside you, Claire. I've seen it since you were a little girl. Follow that fire, even if it burns down everything else around you." "What if I fail, Dad?" "Then at least you failed while trying to do something that actually matters. And that makes you far braver than most people in this world." He pulled me in, holding me in a tight, fierce embrace, the kind of hug that only comes from genuine understanding. "I believe in you," he whispered. "I will always believe in you." 2 years later, Arthur Sterling passed away. It happened on a Tuesday morning in March, a sudden massive case of meningitis. There was no warning and no time for goodbyes. He was only 64. I flew back to Houston that very night, standing by his grave as they lowered my father, the single person in this world who believed in me, into the freezing ground. After the funeral service, my mother cornered me in a quiet parlor of the estate. "He spent every single day worrying himself sick over you," she said, her voice tight and cold. "Every night he would ask if you were okay, if you had enough money, if your insignificant little company had gone under yet." She stared at me, her eyes flashing with something bordering on resentment. "Watching you struggle like that did absolutely nothing good for his health, Claire. She didn't explicitly say you caused this. She didn't have to." Chloe stepped up behind her, crossing her arms. "Mom is right. Dad was always defending you, always making excuses for your choices. If you could have just been normal, his final years wouldn't have been consumed by constant anxiety." I left that night without saying goodbye to either of them. I drove straight to the airport and caught a flight back to Austin. At that point, my company was barely surviving. I had exactly 3 employees, a sweltering warehouse, a rapidly disappearing savings account, and when things felt completely hopeless, I no longer had a father I could call. A week later, a package arrived, forwarded from my parents' address. Inside was an old engineering journal. Opening to the first page, I saw a date from just 3 weeks before his passing. "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I am likely no longer with you. I am so sorry I couldn't tell you this in person. I know the road ahead will be incredibly difficult, and I know they will never make it easy for you. But do not ever let anyone extinguish your light. You are destined to build something truly extraordinary. I have always known it. Whenever you find yourself doubting your path, remember this. I chose to believe in you, and I know I am right. I am already so proud of you. Love, Dad." During the hardest days, the loneliest nights, and every single Christmas I spent entirely on my own, I read those words 1,000 times over. They are the exact reason I never walked away. And it's why, when my mother finally sees my face on the news, I won't feel a sense of triumph or a desire for revenge. I will only feel a profound sadness because the one person who should have been here to see it happen is gone. I closed the walnut box holding my father's journal and placed it back on the nightstand. It was December 23rd. Pale, cool morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. It had been 8 years since Arthur passed, 8 years of quiet, relentless building. Today, everything was about to change. Grief never truly goes away. It just learns to share space with the rest of your life. I carried my father's belief in me like a second heartbeat, driving me through every obstacle, every setback, and every night I came close to giving up. It carried me through every failed material batch, every investor who rejected me, and every single moment I questioned my own sanity. Through it all, I could still hear his voice. "You are destined to build something truly extraordinary." He was right. I just wish he were here to see it. I showered and put on my finest custom dark gray suit, professional, sharp, and understated. Checking my phone, I found 27 unread emails from lawyers, accountants, and board members, alongside a text from David Vance. "Big day, don't be late, deep breaths." I grabbed my keys and drove downtown. The headquarters of AeroBuild occupied a massive converted industrial warehouse in East Austin. There were no flashy tech campus amenities here, no beanbag chairs or ping-pong tables, just highly practical laboratories, whiteboards covered in chemical equations and stress test data, and coffee mugs resting on every available surface. I preferred it that way. Substance over style, results over appearances. I pushed open the double glass doors and stepped into the world I had built from scratch. 65 employees looked up from their monitors and testing stations as I walked by. Material engineers, data scientists, and a compact sales team working the phones in the corner. Everyone waved or nodded as I passed. "Morning, boss. Big day, right? We're all behind you, Claire." These people had staked their entire careers on my vision. Some had been with me since the very beginning, back when I couldn't even afford to pay them a full salary and could only offer equity that looked entirely worthless at the time. Now, that equity was about to bring them life-changing wealth. Walking past the rows of desks, I thought to myself, I built this. Every single hire, every formula, every client relationship, every sleepless night, and every impossible decision. 7 years ago, this company was nothing more than a dream sketched in a notebook. 5 years ago, it was just David and me in a garage with no air conditioning, surviving entirely on frozen pizza and sheer stubbornness. 3 years ago, we landed our first major infrastructure contract along the Texas coast. Today, we were being acquired for nearly $1 billion. I found David Vance in his corner glass office. He was staring at his laptop with the calm, focused demeanor of a man who had weathered far worse storms than this. At 55, with silver-flecked hair, he carried an effortless confidence that comes from having nothing left to prove. As the former chair of material sciences at a top Texas university, he had walked away from a secure academic tenure and lucrative consulting fees to bet everything on a 28-year-old nobody who had plenty of ideas, but absolutely no business plan. "There she is," he said, looking up with a smile. "The woman of the hour." I sat across from him. "I think I'm going to be sick." "Good. That means you completely comprehend the scale of what's happening." I had met David 7 years earlier at an Austin Sustainability Investor Conference. I was freshly grieving my father's death, trying to present my initial research to a room full of highly skeptical investors who had already decided I was wasting their time. I stumbled through my presentation, my voice shaking. The data was rock solid, but my delivery was completely amateur. Everyone passed on the opportunity, too high risk, too ambitious. They wondered who this disgraced wealthy girl from Houston was, showing up with nothing but formulas and unrealistic dreams. But after the room cleared out, one person stayed behind. David. He asked questions, deep, incisive questions that showed he completely understood exactly what I was trying to create. We went out for coffee, and 4 hours later, he made me an offer that changed my life forever. "Your formulas are rough," he had told me back then, "and your business plan is completely non-existent. But your core concept could revolutionize the entire construction industry. Count me in. Let's go build this thing." David brought experience, connections, industry credibility, and academic validation. I brought the vision, the underlying technology, and that relentless drive that my father recognized, but my mother tried to extinguish. We argued constantly, but our mutual respect was absolute. He became the mentor I never knew I needed, the guidance that filled the empty space my father left behind. Now David was studying me with that specific expression he always wore right before saying something he knew I didn't want to hear. You have that look on your face again, he noted, the one you get whenever you think about your family. My posture stiffened. I'm completely fine. You don't have to pretend with me, Claire. This is a monumental moment, and the people who should be celebrating with you aren't here. Have you told them about any of this? They never bothered to ask. He nodded slowly, as if my answer simply confirmed what he already knew. Tell me one more time, he said, shifting the focus. Tell me exactly what we built. Before you sign those papers, I want to hear it from you. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was keeping me grounded, reminding me why this mattered just as the sheer gravity of the moment threatened to overwhelm me. AeroBuild Innovations developed carbon-negative building materials engineered to withstand extreme weather disasters. We analyzed how traditional concrete fractured under storm conditions and restructured the molecular composition. Our material was 3 times stronger than standard concrete, but it actually absorbed atmospheric carbon dioxide as it cured. It didn't just keep structures standing in a Category 5 hurricane, it actively worked against climate change. Right now, our materials were already being utilized in 15 affordable housing reconstruction projects across the coasts of Texas, Florida, and Louisiana. Over the past 3 years, our technology kept more than 1,200 families from losing their homes during 3 major hurricanes. You can't put a price on the lives saved, but my desk drawer was packed with thank you letters from people who returned after massive storms to find their homes completely intact. I built all of this because of my grandmother, who lost her life when her fragile house collapsed during Hurricane Katrina. And I built it for my father. If he were still alive, he would be using this material to build the very sanctuaries he always dreamed of creating. This was what I was building while my family viewed me as a complete failure. This was the reality they never bothered to understand. David nodded in agreement. And now, TerraCorp Global wants to take our material and scale it across disaster-prone areas worldwide by 2027. Hundreds of projects, protecting millions of families. All because you refused to give up. A sudden wave of emotion hit me, but I blinked the tears back. Because we refused to give up, I corrected with a smile. Same difference, he chuckled. Now let's go make history. We walked down the corridor together toward the main conference room where the signing ceremony was set to take place. Employees lined both sides of the hallway, some clapping softly, others giving me a thumbs up and whispering quiet words of encouragement. These were the people who believed in me when absolutely no one else would. They staked their own futures on my vision long before anyone else validated what we were doing. The legal teams were already waiting inside, with neat stacks of folders arranged across a massive mahogany table. A video screen covering an entire wall stood ready, waiting to connect us directly to TerraCorp's headquarters in New York City. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Earlier that morning, I had briefly considered calling my mother, telling her everything before the rest of the world found out. I envisioned saying the words, "Mom, I am about to become a billionaire. I created something that saves lives. Are you proud of me now?" But I knew exactly how she would respond. It would be something along the lines of, "That's nice, dear, but when are you getting married?" So, I never made that call. I walked into that conference room alone, facing the moment just as I had faced everything else over the past 10 years. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but intuition made me look. It was Mia. She must have slipped away and borrowed Chloe's iPad again. "Good luck today, Aunt Claire. I don't really know what you're doing, but Mom said you have a super important meeting today. I hope it goes amazing. I love you." I stared at those few lines from my 9-year-old niece. She was the only person in my family who offered unconditional love, the only one who cared enough to wish me well, even without knowing the details. I quickly texted back, "Thank you, sweetie, I love you too." Sliding the phone back into my pocket, I took a deep breath and turned to face the screen. The video link connected, and Richard Stone appeared. In his late 60s with silver hair, he was the quintessential executive who had built a massive global empire through discipline and foresight. He smiled through the camera, offering the distinct nod of recognition one builder gives to another. "Ms. Sterling," he began, "these past 8 months of negotiations have been incredibly grueling. I have to say, you are one of the toughest negotiators I've ever encountered." "I learned from the best," I said, glancing over at David, who offered a subtle nod of agreement. "Well, let's make it official," Stone said. $920 million for your 40% stake. Once you sign, you will become one of the wealthiest self-made women in Texas. The lawyers slid the documents toward me, uncapping the pens. As I picked one up, every eye in the room locked onto my hand. My father's words echoed clearly in my mind. "You are destined to build something truly extraordinary." In that final second, I wasn't thinking about the money. I was thinking about every single person who told me I would fail. I thought about every Thanksgiving dinner I was left out of, the text from Chloe telling me to get a real job, and every time my mother looked at me with disappointment instead of pride. I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my name on the line. Everything I had built in absolute silence was now an undeniable fact. But I had no idea that in less than 48 hours, that silence would be shattered completely. My family was about to see exactly what they had spent years blindly ignoring, and nothing between us would ever be the same again. It was December 24th, Christmas Eve. I stood inside the elevator of my apartment building, watching the numbers climb toward the top floor. Exactly 24 hours had passed since I signed the documents that brought my net worth to $900 million. My hand could still recall the weight of the pen, the absolute finality of that signature, and the exact moment everything I had quietly constructed became undeniable. The doors slid open, and I walked down the hallway toward my apartment. I had walked this path countless times. The same door, the same lock, the same empty space waiting for me on the other side. I spent 7 long years dreaming of this exact moment, working for it, sacrificing everything for it. And now that it was finally here, I felt completely numb. No, that wasn't entirely true. I felt something, but I hadn't yet found the right word to describe it. The apartment was exactly as I had left it that morning. Spacious, quiet, and completely empty. There was no tree in the corner, no stockings hanging from the mantel, and absolutely no holiday decorations. Just pure silence. The faint hum of the refrigerator, and the pale winter twilight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling glass. I set my bag down, kicked off my heels, walked into the kitchen, and opened a bottle of bourbon. It was an expensive, beautifully aged vintage I had been saving for a truly special occasion. Pouring myself a glass, I walked over to the sofa and sat down, completely enveloped by the stillness of the room. A brand new billionaire, sitting alone on Christmas Eve drinking whiskey. There's probably a support group somewhere for people like me, anonymous lonely billionaires. If the thought weren't so deeply tragic, I might have actually laughed out loud. The money was real, and the success was real, but the emptiness was just as tangible. Achievement carries very little weight when there is no one to share it with, and victory feels completely hollow when the people who should be celebrating with you don't even know it happened. I took a slow sip of the whiskey and did the one thing I knew I shouldn't do. I opened social media. Chloe's profile was sitting right at the top of the feed with a brand new post from 2 hours ago. The photo captured the professionally styled holiday scene inside her Houston mansion. The massive fir tree was covered in white lights and silver ornaments, and the fireplace sent out a warm, inviting glow. Her family was gathered on the matching beige sofa, perfectly color-coordinated. Eleanor sat right in the center, wearing the flawless smile she saved strictly for photographs. Blake had his arm wrapped around Chloe, looking every bit the successful husband, with the children sitting on either side. Everyone looked beautiful, everyone looked happy, and everyone was together. The caption read, "A Christmas Eve filled with heart, beyond grateful for family, love, and the traditions that truly matter. #blessed, #family is everything, #Merry Christmas." There it was again, filled with heart. Yet I wasn't in that photo, and I certainly wasn't in that heart. I scrolled through the comments, torturing myself with every single message. Then I spotted a comment that made me freeze instantly. It was from Mia, posted just 3 minutes prior. "I wish Aunt Claire was here. I miss her." The breath caught in my throat. A 9-year-old child had the courage to say out loud what not a single adult in that family dared to acknowledge. I refreshed the page. The comment was gone, completely deleted. Someone had wiped it out in less than 3 minutes. It had to be Chloe. She would never allow a single detail to disrupt her picture-perfect illusion, and she certainly wouldn't let anyone question why her older sister was missing from the frame. I shut down the app and tossed the phone onto the cushion next to me. My hands were shaking. It wasn't out of anger, but something far deeper, an emotion that felt a lot like mourning. Mia had been reaching out to me in secret for years. The birthday card sent to my office with no return address, the crayon drawings marked, "For Aunt Claire," the video messages recorded on her iPad when her parents weren't paying attention. A 9-year-old girl hiding her affection for her aunt like contraband, as if caring about me was something shameful. I walked into the bedroom and pulled open the nightstand drawer. Inside was a thick folder containing everything Mia had sent me over the last 3 years. I spread the pages out across the bed. There was a stick figure drawing of me with wild curly hair and a bright smile. "You are my favorite aunt," the caption read, written with the distinct spelling of a young child. Another showed a rainbow stretching over a house, with 2 figures holding hands. "I love you, Aunt Claire. Come home soon." And then a drawing of a Christmas tree, with a single isolated figure standing off to the side. "This is you. You look sad. I want to make you happy." Every single drawing was a window into exactly what my niece was seeing, what she truly understood. The reality that the adults in her life completely refused to acknowledge. Mia saw me for who I really was. While her mother and grandmother decided I was completely worthless, this little girl insisted on sending love through the mail. She was the single member of the Sterling family who had never given up on me, and I hadn't seen her in person for nearly 2 years. Chloe made absolutely sure of that. Resting at the very bottom of the drawer was a postcard I had received just last week. Mia's handwriting had become much neater, more controlled. She was growing up. "Merry Christmas, Aunt Claire. I drew a star for you, because even when people can't see you, you are still shining. Love, Mia." And at the very bottom, a brief postscript. "Please don't be sad." I pressed the postcard to my chest, finally letting the tears fall. A billionaire, completely undone by a child's crayon-drawn star. On the sofa, my phone vibrated. I wiped my face, walked over, and checked the screen. It was David. I answered immediately. "Shouldn't you be out celebrating right now?" he asked, a distinct smile in his voice. "I'm sitting here drinking whiskey alone, looking at photos of my family's Christmas Eve party, the one I wasn't invited to." Silence hung over the line for a moment. "Claire, I know I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't help it." In the background, I could hear the bustling sounds of his evening. Laughter, children playing, the joyful chaos of a happy holiday gathering. He was at his ski cabin in Colorado with his wife, kids, and grandkids, living the kind of life I had never been able to build for myself. "Listen to me," David said firmly. "What you accomplished today, what you built, your father would be incredibly proud of you." I stayed silent, unable to find my voice. "Do you hear me, Claire? Arthur would be so proud." "He's the only one who would be," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though it cracked anyway. "My mother thinks I wasted my life, and my sister thinks I'm a joke. Tomorrow, when the news breaks, they'll finally know the truth. They'll see exactly what they refused to look at for years." "Is that what you want, just for them to finally understand?" I thought about his question carefully. I don't even know what I want anymore. David was quiet for a few seconds before offering words that would stay with me forever. "The point isn't to prove them wrong, Claire. The point is that you built something real, something that helps people, something of profound value. Whether they choose to recognize it or not doesn't change what it is." "I know. Intellectually, I know that. But I'm 38 years old. I'm worth $900 million, and part of me still just wants my mother to look at me and say she's proud." The silence stretched between us again. "Give it some time," he finally said softly. "This is a massive wave of information for anyone to process, especially in a complicated family. And if they never do, you'll have to find a way to make peace with that on your own. You've done it before. Go get some sleep and call me if you need anything at all. Oh, and Claire, Merry Christmas. Even if they aren't proud of you, I am." The call ended. Sitting in my dark apartment, holding the phone, his words echoed in the empty space. I pulled the walnut box from the nightstand again, opening it with care. My father's journal rested inside, its pages soft from years of reading. I turned to that hidden message, letting his words anchor me one last time. "Whenever you find yourself doubting your path, remember this. I chose to believe in you, and I know I am right. I am already so proud of you. Love, Dad." I traced his handwriting with my fingertips. "I did it, Dad," I whispered into the quiet room. "I wish you were here to see what your belief built." A tear fell onto the page, and I quickly wiped it away, protecting his words from my grief. The television was on in the background, the volume low, serving as nothing more than white noise to fill the silence. But then, a graphic caught my eye. A news anchor appeared on screen in front of a massive digital backdrop. "Coming up after the break, we have an exclusive report," she announced with polished enthusiasm. A Texas-based startup has just made history with a near-billion-dollar acquisition. Who is the mysterious founder poised to become America's newest billionaire? My professional headshot from the company website flashed onto the screen. My face, my name, broadcasting directly into millions of homes across the nation. "We will have the full story tomorrow morning on our Christmas special," the anchor smiled. "You won't want to miss it." Instantly, my phone began to vibrate. Emails from reporters, messages requesting comment, interview invitations, and digital outlets scrambling for an exclusive coverage. But there was nothing from my family. Not a single notification from Houston. They didn't know yet. Tomorrow, they would find out right along with the rest of the world. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark. The whiskey was gone, and my father's journal rested in my lap. The streets of Austin were completely serene under the night sky. In a few hours, the sun would rise, and America would wake up to the story of Claire Sterling. And in a massive mansion in Houston, my mother would see my face on her screen. I had no idea what would happen then, if she would call or what she would say. All I knew was that after 38 years of being invisible, I was finally about to be seen. That night, I fell asleep on the sofa, clutching my father's journal like a lifeline. I dreamed of him, and he was smiling. When I woke up, the world had changed completely. On Christmas morning, I was awakened by my phone violently vibrating on the coffee table. It wasn't a normal alert. It was a relentless, almost frantic buzzing, as if the device had come alive and was desperate for attention. I opened my eyes, staring blankly at the ceiling. My neck was stiff and sore from spending the night on the couch, my fingers still tightly gripping my father's journal. Pale morning light filled the apartment, and my phone was still jumping across the table. With clumsy, half-awake fingers, I grabbed the device. The screen lit up with an unbelievable string of numbers: 47 missed calls, 231 unread text messages, and well over 1,000 email notifications. For a terrifying second, I thought something awful had happened. An emergency, a tragedy, or some disaster that required 47 people to contact me first thing on Christmas morning. Then it clicked. The deal, the news, the story scheduled to break today. I sat up straight, my heart racing as I opened the text messages. The very first one was from David. "Turn on any news channel. You are absolutely everywhere." With a trembling hand, I grabbed the remote control and turned on the TV. My own face was staring right back at me. I flipped over to CNBC. A perfectly coiffed anchor sat behind the desk, a massive graphic displaying financial data behind her. "It is being called one of the most incredible business success stories of the year," she reported. Austin-based AeroBuild Innovations was acquired yesterday by industry giant TerraCorp Global in a deal worth $920 million. My portrait took over the entire screen. My face was being broadcast live into tens of millions of homes on Christmas morning. Co-founder Claire Sterling, 38, holds a 40% stake valued at over $360 million in liquid assets alone, making her one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in recent history. I sat frozen on the sofa watching complete strangers discuss my life like a character in a movie. I switched over to the Wall Street Journal's video broadcast. Sterling's hurricane-resistant, carbon-negative materials have kept more than 1,200 coastal homes safe from destruction over the last 3 years. A different anchor, the exact same tone of absolute respect. I flipped to Fox Business. A true modern American dream, building an empire from nothing in just 7 years. I tuned into the local Austin news. Our very own Claire Sterling has proven that true innovation happens right here in Central Texas. My face was on every channel. My name was in every headline. And the only thought running through my mind was, my mother is seeing this right now. I opened my laptop and went straight to the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. The banner headline dominated the top of the page in bold letters. "Meet Claire Sterling, the green building visionary who just became a billionaire." Beneath the headline was a photograph of me I had entirely forgotten about. It was taken 3 years ago at an industry conference. In the photo, I was laughing, looking completely confident, vibrant, and entirely in control of my own destiny. I barely recognized myself. That woman looked like she knew exactly where she was going. The article traced my journey in meticulous detail. The Ivy League education, the Houston real estate empire I walked away from, and those early days spent in a sweltering garage with David. Quotes from colleagues were scattered throughout the text. "Claire is the most determined executive I have ever met," one colleague noted. And a quote from David. "From the very first day I met her, I knew she was going to disrupt this industry. I'm just grateful I got to see it happen firsthand. There was an entire section dedicated to the real-world impact of AeroBuild, the coastal reconstruction projects, the lives protected during Category 5 storms, the mayors and governors praising our technology, and the emotional thank you letters from families who didn't lose everything. It was everything I had fought for, laid out in black and white for the entire world to see. Then, I reached a paragraph near the end that made me catch my breath. When asked about her personal support system, Sterling remained uncharacteristically reserved. "I have incredible mentors and colleagues," she said in a recent interview. "They believed in me when it mattered most." There was absolutely no mention of family, because there was nothing to mention. The reporter asked about my support system, and I couldn't name a single person sharing my DNA. It wasn't to protect them. It was simply because they had never been there to protect me. I scrolled down to the comment section, which already had hundreds of entries. "My daughter is studying civil engineering and struggles with imposter syndrome every day," one comment read. "I am sending her this article immediately. Thank you, Ms. Sterling, for showing her what is possible." Another user wrote, "This is exactly what happens when you have the courage to bet on yourself. Absolutely incredible. Complete strangers were celebrating me. Strangers were finding inspiration in my journey. People I had never met were drawing strength from my story." Yet, looking at my phone, there was still no incoming call from Houston. My mother hadn't reached out. My sister hadn't messaged me. The family that shut me out for Christmas remained completely silent, even as the rest of the world cheered my name. I closed the laptop, letting the reality settle over me. I had dreamed of this exact moment for years, the ultimate validation, the definitive proof that I wasn't crazy for walking away from security. But the victory felt incredibly hollow when the people who should have witnessed it refused to open their eyes. My phone rang, displaying a familiar name, David. I answered immediately, deeply grateful for a voice I actually trusted. "Merry Christmas, billionaire," he said warmly. "How does it feel?" "I don't know, David. I think I'm still in complete shock." "That's entirely normal. When we closed our first round of funding, I didn't sleep for 3 days. This is infinitely bigger, Claire. It's an absolute tidal wave." "I see that. It's overwhelming." "My grandson just saw you on the television," David chuckled. "He thinks you're a literal superhero now." I couldn't help but laugh softly, my first genuine smile in days. "I guess, technically I am." Then his tone shifted, becoming gentler, more serious. "Has your family called you yet?" The silence stretched out between us over the line. "No, nothing at all, not even a text." I heard him sigh on the other end. "It's still early in the morning, Claire. Maybe they haven't seen the news yet." "It's on every single channel, David. They've seen it." "Well, maybe they just don't know what to say, or they just don't care." We both stayed completely silent over the line. After what felt like an eternity, I finally found my voice. "I thought I'd feel this massive sense of triumph, David. Like I'd finally proved myself and wiped away all those years of being looked down on. But I just feel empty. It's like winning a race only to look up and realize the grandstands are completely vacant. What's the point of proving them wrong if they aren't even willing to look?" "The point isn't to prove them wrong, Claire," he said softly. "The point is that what you built is real. It's actively protecting people from disasters, and it matters. Whether they choose to look at it or not changes absolutely nothing. Intellectually, I know that. But I'm nearly 40 years old. I'm worth almost $1 billion. And at the end of the day, I'm still just that little girl desperately waiting for her mother to say, 'I'm proud of you.'" Another heavy silence stretched between us. "Give it some time," David offered gently. "Even the most difficult families need time to process a tidal wave of information like this. And if they never do, you'll have to find another path to your own peace. Call me whenever you need to, Claire. I'm incredibly proud of you, even if they aren't." The line went dead. I was completely alone again, surrounded by a flood of notifications from complete strangers, without a single syllable from my own flesh and blood. Time crawled by. My phone kept lighting up with alerts from journalists, high-profile investors, and old acquaintances who suddenly remembered I existed. Friends from college I hadn't spoken to in a decade sent messages like, "Oh my God, Claire, is that really you on TV?" A former coworker from the Houston real estate firm wrote, "I always knew you were destined for great things." People from every forgotten corner of my past were suddenly pulled in by the gravity of my success. Everyone wanted to reconnect. Everyone had a congratulatory message to offer. Everyone, except the people who should have been first in line. By midday, I had already completed 3 phone interviews with major media outlets and been featured on 4 separate news segments. By 1 in the afternoon, my inbox had climbed past 2,000 unread emails. By 2, I received an official congratulatory note from the governor of Texas, along with messages from 2 tech giants I had admired for years. By 3 in the afternoon, my family still hadn't called. I checked my phone every few minutes like an obsession. I opened the text thread with my mother. The last message was a generic holiday greeting sent to a group chat 3 months ago for Thanksgiving. I had replied with a thumbs-up emoji, and that was it. I opened the thread with Chloe. The last message was her venomous text from 3 days prior, telling me I always make things uncomfortable and advising me to get a real job. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. I had spent 10 long years learning how to survive without them, but needing someone and wanting them are 2 entirely different things. I desperately, painfully wanted them to be the ones to reach out first. I wanted them to take that initial step, to prove that I was important enough for them to simply pick up the phone. At exactly 3:45, as I stood by the window watching a rare, freezing winter rain wash over downtown Austin, my phone started to ring. It wasn't a text message, it was an actual call. I looked down at the screen and my heart skipped a beat. The name practically glowed against the dark background. Mom. My thumb hovered over the green button. The phone kept ringing, vibrating against my palm like a steady heartbeat. I had waited a decade for this exact call. I had dreamed about it, and I had dreaded it. And now that it was actually happening, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted her to say. Taking a deep breath, I pressed answer and brought the phone to my ear. Hello? There was a long pause on the other end. Then, my mother's voice finally came through. Trembling, completely hesitant, and sounding nothing like the cold woman who had told me just 3 days ago that my presence would make everyone uncomfortable. Claire, she said quietly, I just saw you on the news. Another silence stretched out. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Is that... She stopped, clearing her throat before trying again. Is that really you? 4 words. After 10 years of dynamic neglect, 10 years of being treated as the family embarrassment, 10 years of silence, exclusion, and being handled like invisible air. 4 words. Is that really you? It was as if she had never truly known me at all, and maybe that was the core of the entire issue. Maybe she never did. Is that really you? My mother repeated, her voice cracking over the line as if she were speaking to a ghost. I stood by the window, watching the cold rain hit the pavement, letting her wait for the answer to a question that never should have been asked in the first place. Yes, Mom, I said flatly, it's me. The suffocating silence stretched between us once more. I could hear her breathing, trying to process the information, trying to piece together the daughter she had so easily cast aside with the woman currently being featured on national television networks. The divide was simply too vast for her mind to cross in a single moment. I let her struggle. I had absolutely no intention of making this easy for her. For the first time in my adult life, I held the absolute power in our relationship, and I wasn't about to just give it away. Claire, she finally managed to say, the words tight. I don't understand. They are saying you built a massive company, a green tech corporation. They said you're worth hundreds of millions. It's 920 million if you factor in the vested options. More silence. The sheer weight of that number hung between us like a mountain. Impossibly massive and undeniably real. How is that even possible? Why didn't you ever tell us? And there it was. The exact question I knew was coming. There were no congratulations. No, I'm so proud of you. And no apology for missing the entire journey. Instead, it was an accusation wrapped inside a question. Why didn't you tell us? As if the fault lay entirely with me. As if I owed them information they had never once bothered to look for. You never asked, Mom. What do you mean I never asked? Of course I cared about your life. No, Mom. You asked when I was going to get married. You asked why I couldn't just settle down and be cooperative like Chloe. You asked when I was going to stop playing around and get a real corporate management job. But you never once asked what I was actually building. That is entirely unfair, Claire. I always wanted to know what you were up to. Really? Then when was the last time you asked about my laboratory research? When was the last time you asked what AeroBuild actually did? She didn't answer. The silence was all the confirmation I needed. You didn't even know the name of my company, did you? Still, she said nothing. There was no defense because there was simply nothing to defend. For a solid decade, she was perfectly content knowing absolutely nothing about my life except for the parts that disappointed her. And now she had to face the reality that her disappointment was rooted entirely in ignorance, that the daughter she treated like a complete failure had built a global empire while she was looking the other way. I heard her breathing shift, catching in her throat, the distinct precursor to tears. "Claire," she said, her voice growing raspy, "I am your mother. When something this monumental happens, I have a right to know. I have a right to be included." Despite the heavy pounding in my chest, I kept my tone completely steady. "Mom, 3 days ago, you explicitly told me not to come home for Christmas. You said my choice to be there would make everyone uncomfortable. That was entirely different. I didn't know back then." "Exactly. You didn't know because you never wanted to know." The tears finally broke. I could hear the thick, heavy emotion in her voice, the kind of vulnerability she normally kept locked behind a perfect exterior. "I never meant to hurt you, Claire. I was just trying to keep the peace in this family. Chloe and Blake have been arguing constantly, and I was just thinking about, you were thinking that it would be much easier without me around. It was easier to pretend I didn't exist, sweeter to celebrate Christmas with the daughter who made you proud, rather than face the one you had already given up on." "That wasn't my intention." "Wasn't it? Then explain it to me, Mom. Explain how cutting me out of every single family holiday for 3 consecutive years was supposed to make me feel welcome. Explain how I was supposed to believe you cared when every single action signaled complete rejection." She was weeping openly now, soft, uncertain sobs coming through the receiver. A small residual part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her. The old version of myself that spent 38 years begging for validation that always came with strings attached. But a stronger, more grounded part of me held the line. "Your tears don't undo what happened, Mom. They don't erase a decade of being treated like a ghost." "I didn't realize things were that bad, Claire. I swear I didn't know." "How could you not know? I tried in the beginning. I tried to tell you about the materials I was engineering, about the company, about what we were building. You were the one who stopped calling. You were the one who pushed me away." "I stopped calling because every conversation felt so incredibly difficult. I pushed away because it was painful to watch you struggle so hard." "Did you ever stop to think about why I stopped trying too, Mom? Or did it just feel like a relief to let me go?" The question landed heavily. I heard her catch her breath sharply, the sound someone makes when they are suddenly forced to confront a truth they have spent a lifetime avoiding. "It was never a relief," she whispered. "I miss you." "Then why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you ever fight for me?" She had absolutely no answer. There were only more tears, the sound of a woman realizing that her long-term neglect carried consequences she had never anticipated. I waited for her to find the right words, to offer something beyond a basic excuse. But all she could manage was that same repeated refrain. "I didn't know. I truly didn't know." As the crying began to subside, a different tone started to filter into Eleanor's voice. It was a familiar pattern re-emerging from the chaos. "Claire," she said, her voice steadying. "Let's not dwell on the past right now. What matters is that you have accomplished something truly extraordinary. We should celebrate this." "We?" "Yes, as a family. You should come home to Houston. We can put together a proper Christmas dinner. Everyone would be absolutely thrilled to see you." A profound coldness settled in my chest. This was her signature move. It was exactly what she always did. Whenever reality became too uncomfortable to face, she simply tried to bypass it, rewriting the narrative and pretending that acknowledging an issue was the exact same thing as fixing it. "By everyone, you mean everyone would be thrilled to see the billionaire?" "That is not what I mean at all. 3 days ago, my presence made everyone uncomfortable. Now all of a sudden, everyone wants to celebrate with me? People make mistakes, Claire. I made a mistake. Can't we just move past this and let it go?" "This is always your pattern, Mom. You rewrite history so you can play the victim or the hero, but you are never, ever the one who caused the damage." "I wasn't trying to rewrite history. I was just trying to set the record straight." "No, you were just trying to make things convenient for yourself. There is a massive difference between the two." In the background, a voice came through, muffled but completely distinct. It was Chloe. "Mom, what is she talking about? Give me the phone." Eleanor spoke away from the receiver. "Not right now, Chloe. Just give me a second." "Mom, I want to talk to my sister." My stomach dropped. Sister. As if that word still meant anything. As if there was still a shred of a relationship left to save. Eleanor spoke back into the phone. "Chloe wants to talk to you." "I am sure she does." There was a rustling sound of shuffling and static. Then, my sister's voice came through, bright and eager, completely oblivious to the wreckage she had caused. "Claire, oh my God, I can't believe it. Why didn't you tell us?" The exact same question, the exact same entitled assumption, blaming my silence rather than their own complete indifference. It wasn't about the years of mockery and dismissiveness. It was about my failure to notify them of a success they never believed I would achieve in the first place. "Hello, Chloe. This is insane. My sister is a billionaire. Blake is losing his mind. He keeps talking about how we need to sit down with you and talk about investment opportunities. So that is why you picked up the phone? Investment opportunities?" "What? Of course not. I am calling because I am your sister and I just found out you are practically a celebrity. You are definitely not calling because just 3 days ago you texted me saying I always make things awkward and told me to go find a real job. Come on, I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it, Chloe? Because it sounded an awful lot like you just wanted me to disappear." "Claire, stop. We are sisters. Sisters fight all the time. It doesn't mean anything." "It meant everything to me." "You are being so dramatic." "This is exactly what I meant earlier." "Goodbye, Chloe." "Wait, Claire, don't." I heard Eleanor snatch the phone back. "Claire, please don't hang up. Come back to Houston. Let us talk in person." "Why would I come back?" "Because I am your mother. Because despite everything that happened, I still love you. And..." Her voice broke again. "And your father would have wanted us to try and make peace." I froze. My father. She knew the only card left to play was him. She knew exactly what Arthur meant to me. "Don't use Dad to manipulate me." "I am not manipulating you. I am begging you. Please, Claire, just come home. Just come back so we can talk." Every single instinct in my body screamed at me to say no, to protect myself, to stay in Austin, to hold on to the life I had built entirely without them. But another voice whispered in my mind. My father's voice. "You are stronger than your anger, Claire. Don't let it make your choices for you." "I will think about it." "That is the only promise I will make," I said. "But Mom, if I do come back, I am absolutely not going there to pretend everything is fine. I am not doing fake photos for social media just to make everyone feel good about themselves." "I understand. You better understand. Because if I go, I am going to say things you do not want to hear, and this time, you are going to have to sit there and listen." Dead silence. "I will call you tomorrow with my decision." Before she could even respond, I hung up. I stood by the window, gripping my phone tightly, watching the freezing rain outside slowly turn into winter snow. My mother wanted me home, my sister wanted to talk about investments, and my late father was being used as a bargaining chip. I had a choice to make. Was I strong enough to face them, or was I smart enough to walk away for good? I had 24 hours to find the answer. That night, the echo of that phone call lingered in my mind for hours. As darkness fell over this Christmas day, the crushing weight of the decision pressed down heavily on me. Go to Houston and face them? Or stay in Austin, protecting the fragile peace I had fought so hard to build? Before I could even clear my head, my phone began to vibrate again. This time, it wasn't reporters, and it wasn't investors. It was family. Word had clearly spread like wildfire through the family grapevine. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect, and everyone had something to say. Aunt Barbara, Cousin Greg, Uncle Robert. Some of these names hadn't flashed on my screen in years, and some I had practically forgotten even existed. It is funny how $900 million can instantly cure a family's amnesia. I watched the notifications pile up, leaving every single one of them unread. Every name was a glaring reminder of holidays I was never invited to, birthdays they forgot, and family group chats I was never added to. They weren't reaching out because they cared about me. They were reaching out because the rest of the world was telling them I mattered. I scrolled through the messages, sorting through the sudden chaos. Aunt Barbara hadn't spoken to me in 5 years. Her text read, "Sweetie, I always knew you were special. We absolutely have to get together for lunch sometime soon." Cousin Greg borrowed $3,000 from me back in 2019 and never paid back a single cent. His message read, "Hey sis, so incredibly proud of you. Listen, I have this business idea and I'd love to get your thoughts on it." Uncle Robert had literally pointed a finger in my face during Thanksgiving 7 years ago, telling me I was choosing a dead-end path. Now he wrote, "Claire, your father would be so incredibly proud of you. I always told Eleanor that you were going to make something of yourself one day." Every single message followed the exact same recipe: fake warmth, rewriting history, and a thinly veiled hint that they wanted something from me. Not a single person apologized. Not a single person acknowledged that they had treated me like a ghost for a decade. They just pretended the last 10 years never happened, as if I should be profoundly grateful for their sudden attention. A sudden notification popped up at the top of my screen. Claire Sterling has been added to the Sterling family. The group chat I was never deemed worthy of entering. I tapped on it and found 47 unread messages. Did everyone see Claire on the news? I honestly can't believe it. She really should have told us. When is she coming to visit? They were talking about me as if I wasn't even there. Like I was a trending topic to be discussed, rather than a living, breathing person reading every single word. I typed out a quick message. Hi everyone, yes, it really is me. And yes, I can see every single word you are writing. I watched the chat go completely dead. The gray typing bubbles appeared and disappeared over and over again. Nobody knew what to say. For the first time in 10 years, they were the ones feeling awkward and uncomfortable. It felt better than I expected, but it also felt worse than I hoped. The phone rang again. A number I recognized instantly. Blake, my arrogant investment banker brother-in-law. The exact same Wall Street guy who once sat across from me at the Thanksgiving table and told me that the real elite don't gamble their futures away in a laboratory. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. Let him wait. Claire, finally got through to you. His voice was smooth and practiced, the exact same tone he probably used right before exploiting a client. Look, I know things have been a bit complicated with the family, but I wanted to let you know that I have always respected your hustle. My hustle? You mean building a company from nothing? That takes real drive. I believe those were your words, right? You told me at your own dinner table that I was wasting my degree, Blake. He paused for a fraction of a second, recovering instantly. Hey, people say things they don't mean, right? Let bygones be bygones. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about a few opportunities. My firm manages assets for high net worth individuals, and given your new situation, you are going to need a highly professional wealth management team. So you're a financial advisor now, Blake? More than that, Claire. Family looks out for family, right? I can get you the absolute best rates, introduce you to some major power players. Is that why you called? To pitch me your business? Another pause, much longer this time. I could practically hear him recalculating his leverage. I called because we're family, Claire. I wasn't family to you last week. His voice hardened just a bit, the mask slipping slightly. Look, I am trying to extend an olive branch here. Chloe is completely overwhelmed right now. Your mother is a total wreck, and honestly, this situation caught everyone completely off guard. Caught everyone completely off guard. I repeated the words, letting them sink in. That is a very interesting way to describe realizing you completely misjudged someone for an entire decade. Claire, I actually have to run. Blake, thank you for making this call. It told me everything I needed to know. I hung up before he could say another word. Amidst all the overwhelming noise, one specific name lit up my screen that made me answer instantly. Professor Sarah Jenkins, my college mentor. The woman who looked at me when I was 27 years old, absolutely terrified, with zero business plan, and actually saw my potential. She guided me down this path, believing in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. Claire, her voice was warm but direct, I saw the news. I wanted to reach out before the vultures completely descend on you. Skip the official PR answer. How are you really doing? I finally let out a breath. For the first time all day, it was a real, genuine question. I don't know, Sarah. I thought it would feel different. Better. Success rarely looks the way we imagine, especially when the people who are supposed to celebrate with you are the exact same ones who doubted you the most. I remember when you walked into my office 12 years ago. You had this fire in your eyes, this desperate need to prove something. I asked you, who are you trying to prove it to? I remember I said, to everyone. And what did I tell you? You said everyone is too many people. Pick one person whose opinion actually matters. Did you ever pick that person? My father, but he's gone. Then pick yourself, Claire. You are the only one who has been there for every single step of this journey. She paused. Are you going to see your family? I don't know. My mother wants me to go back to Houston. What do you want? I want closure. I want to say the things I have been holding in for 10 years. I want them to listen to me, to truly hear me, just once, and then I want to walk away. Then go, but go for yourself, not for them. Remember, you don't need their approval anymore. You never did. I know, but I think I need to go say goodbye to the version of me that used to crave it. After hanging up with Sarah, I sat in the darkness, weighing my options. Every reason to stay vied with every reason to return. That was when a different kind of notification lit up my screen. Not a phone call, not a text message, and not the family group chat. An email from maya.sterling.2015@gmail.com. Subject: Please read this, Aunt Claire. My heart caught in my throat. With trembling fingers, I tapped it open. Dear Aunt Claire, I saw you on TV today. You looked so beautiful and important. Mom and Dad are acting really weird. They keep talking about you and about money and things I don't understand. I don't care about any of that. I just wanted to tell you that I am so proud of you. I always knew you were special, even when nobody else was saying it. I still have all your letters. I read them whenever I am sad, and they make me feel better. Will you come visit me? I really want to see you. I drew 12 new pictures, and I saved them all for you. I love you, Aunt Claire. I love you even if you aren't a billionaire. I loved you before you were one. Love, Mia. P.S. Please don't be mad at Mom and Dad. They don't understand things the way we do. I read the email 3 times. Tears welled up in my eyes. The first real tears I had allowed myself to cry all day. A 9-year-old child understood what every single adult in our family couldn't. She loved me when I was worth nothing in their eyes. Mia saw me when everyone else looked away. She was the reason I had to go back. Not for my mother and not for Chloe, but for the little girl who never stopped believing in me, even when she had to do it in secret. I replied immediately, Dear Mia, I love you too, more than you know. Yes, I am coming to see you. I will be there tomorrow. Save those drawings for me. Love, Aunt Claire. I hit send. The decision was made. I opened my laptop and searched for flights. Austin to Houston. One way. December 26th. There was a flight at 9 tomorrow morning, first class. Why not? I could afford it now. My finger hovered over the purchase button. I wasn't going back to Houston for a reconciliation. I wasn't going to make peace or pretend everything was fine. I was going to say the words that should have been said years ago, to stand in front of the people who dismissed me and force them to see exactly who I had become. Not for revenge and not for validation, for closure, and for the 9-year-old girl who never lost faith in me. I clicked purchase. The confirmation email arrived seconds later. I closed my laptop and looked out at the Austin skyline one last time. Tomorrow I would face my family. Tomorrow I would speak the truth. Whatever happened after that, at least I would finally be entirely free. At 9 o'clock on the morning of December 26th, the plane took off from Austin. I sat in first class, watching the Texas hill country shrink beneath the clouds. My phone was turned off. I needed this moment of absolute quiet, time to mentally prepare myself for what was coming. Before boarding, David had sent me a text. Remember, you aren't going there to be loved. You are going there to reclaim your freedom. If you need backup, call me anytime. I read those words 3 times before switching off my device. He understood what my family never could. This trip wasn't about forgiveness. It was about finality. It was about letting out a decade's worth of suppressed words, standing before those who belittled me, and finally being heard. The flight attendant offered champagne, but I politely declined. I wanted to be completely sharp when I faced them. No buffers, no escapes, just the truth, and whatever consequences came with it. When I stepped off the plane, the air at Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport hit me, heavy with its familiar mugginess and humidity. Even in December, it was noticeably warmer here than in Austin. The scent was a strange mix of intimate and foreign. I had breathed this air for 18 years before escaping to the East Coast for college, and later fleeing to Austin. Now I was back. Not as the runaway failure of a daughter, not as the cast-aside relative, but as something entirely different. Someone they didn't even know how to look at yet. I rented a car at the counter, a very understated silver Honda. No luxury badges. I didn't want my arrival to look like a hollow boast. That would only give them ammunition, a reason to resent me rather than reflect on themselves. I wanted to appear exactly as I was, the person they never bothered to get to know. The drive to the affluent neighborhood of River Oaks took about 40 minutes. 40 minutes was enough time to remember exactly who I used to be and to confirm who I wanted to become. The streets of Houston unfolded like a map of my past. A ghost lurked around every single corner. Over there was the high-end shopping center. I worked there at 16, folding clothes in a department store just to save up for my first set of lab equipment. My mother had wanted me to work at a boutique owned by one of her wealthy friends, saying it was more respectable. I chose the department store because it was my choice. Over there was where I graduated high school. When I walked across the stage as valedictorian, instead of becoming the prom queen my mother had envisioned, the look she gave me was almost one of disappointment, as if being smart was just a consolation prize for not being pretty enough. Over there was the church where we held my father's funeral. I slowed down as I drove past. The parking lot was empty now, but I could still see the long line of black cars from that day, could still feel the weight of the casket as they lowered him into the ground, could still hear little Mia asking where Grandpa went. And at that intersection over there, that was where I pulled over and sobbed after resigning as vice president of the family company. I broke down on that corner for 20 minutes, terrified of what I had done, terrified of what was coming, scared that my mother was right and that I was ruining my life. The life I built in Austin was largely designed to escape these streets, these memories, and these people. And now, I was driving straight into the heart of the storm. At a red light, I glanced at my phone. A text from Chloe read, "Mom is losing her mind. She's been deep cleaning the house since 6 a.m. Just a heads up." I didn't reply. My mother cleaned furiously whenever she was anxious. When she couldn't control a situation, she controlled the dust. I wondered what she thought she could scrub away before I arrived. 10 years of neglect? Cruel words? Suffocating silence? Some stains don't wash out no matter how hard you scrub. The Sterling family estate looked exactly as it did in my memories. A massive 2-story French provincial home, its perfectly manicured lawn still vibrant green even in December. The copper wind chimes my father had hung 20 years ago still graced the porch, and the red roses my mother was obsessed with still bloomed in their meticulously maintained beds. Everything was preserved like a museum exhibit, displaying the illusion of the perfect family we once pretended to be. I pulled into the driveway, keeping my hands on the steering wheel, and sat in silence for a moment. This was it, no turning back. I took a deep breath and opened the car door. The front door opened instantly. They had clearly been watching from the window. My mother, Eleanor, appeared first. She wore a sophisticated silk blouse, tailored trousers, pearl earrings, and fresh lipstick. This was the armor she put on whenever a public relations performance was required. Behind her stood Chloe, her arms crossed, an unreadable expression on her face. Blake hovered in the background with his phone in hand, already assessing the situation, looking for an angle. Then, pushing past all of them, rushing down the steps came Mia. She crashed into my arms like a little whirlwind, locking her arms tightly around my waist and burying her face in my coat. "Aunt Claire, you're here, you're really here, I knew you would come." I knelt down and gave her a true, fierce hug. It was the first genuine embrace I had felt in days. "Hi, sweetie, I missed you so much." "I missed you more, to infinity and back to the moon." She pulled away, studying my face with a serious gaze. 9 years old and already so perceptive. "Are you okay? You look really tired." "I'm okay now that I see you." Mia leaned in close to my ear, dropping her voice to a tiny whisper. "Everyone has been so weird since the news came out. Dad keeps talking about money, Mom was crying in the bathroom, and Grandma keeps wiping down things that are already clean. What do you think?" "I think I agree with you, but to you, I am still just Aunt Claire." "That is the best thing I've heard all week," Mia said with a bright smile. Just then, my mother stepped up to us. She opened her arms, attempting to embrace me. "Claire, you're finally here." The hug was rigid on my end. I didn't wrap my arms around her, but I didn't push her away either. "Let me look at you." She stepped back to arm's length, scanning me like an exhibit. "You look wonderful, a bit thin. Have you been eating properly?" The exact same words, every single time we met, as if absolutely nothing had changed. As if the news, the phone call, and the 10 years of silence had never happened. She was playing her part perfectly, the loving mother welcoming her successful daughter home. I couldn't help but wonder who the audience was for this script. The neighbors across the street? Herself? Or me? "Come inside," she said. "I made your favorite Texas brisket and mashed potatoes just like when you were little." I followed her onto the porch, stepped through the front door, and froze. The walls of the foyer were covered in family photographs. It was the same photo wall I had grown up with, but something had changed. New pictures had been added, recent ones. They were screenshots of my television interviews, hastily printed out and framed overnight. She had spent her evening writing me back into the family history, acting as if I had been there all along, as if 10 years of absence could be erased by a single trip to a framing shop. Mia tugged on my hand. I have all your drawings ready, Aunt Claire, 12 whole pictures. I even drew a special one for you this morning. It is you and me as superheroes, and you have a massive cape. I cannot wait to see them, I said, smiling down at her. Then a serious shadow crossed her young face. Aunt Claire? What is it, sweetie? Are you and Mom going to fight? She has been really scared lately. She thinks you hate her. I paused. A 9-year-old child was asking me to show mercy to the mother who had actively helped isolate me. I don't hate anyone, Mia. I just have some things I need to say. Okay, she whispered. Just please don't be too mean. She is still my mom. The weight of that request pressed heavily on my shoulders. I nodded, letting her lead me into the living room where the rest of the family was waiting. The hour that followed was pure performance art. My mother served the food, making shallow, harmless small talk. Blake carefully asked questions about my company's structure, clearly fishing for inside information he could exploit later. Chloe remained mostly silent, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Only Mia was real, chattering away about school, her hamster, and her new piano lessons. I kept my answers short and polite, complimenting the food while barely touching my plate. I played the part of the returning daughter, keeping my true thoughts under lock and key. Eventually, I excused myself to use the restroom, walking down the hallway I had traveled 1,000 times as a child. I passed the door to my old bedroom, past the closet where I used to hide when my parents argued, and past the photographs of a family I barely recognized anymore. On my way back, someone blocked my path. It was Chloe. She had followed me. This hallway was lined with my father's old bookshelves, still holding the books he used to read to us when we were kids. Dickens, Hemingway, Fitzgerald. Everything was perfectly preserved, just like the rest of this house. Claire, wait a second. Her voice was different than it had been on the phone, much softer, almost hesitant. I need to talk to you alone. Before we go back out there and Mom starts her routine. Her routine? You know, the one where she pretends everything is perfect and we all just play along because it is easier. I studied my sister, looking for any sign of a trap or manipulation. But Chloe just looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and slightly swollen. She had been crying. I know you hate me, she said. I know I deserve it. I don't hate you, Chloe. You should. I was terrible to you for years, and it wasn't just because of Mom's expectations. I wanted to do it. Those words hung in the air, unexpectedly raw. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't carry it anymore. Seeing you on that screen, seeing the empire you built while we were all dismissing you. She stopped, swallowing hard. Claire, there is something I have to tell you. Something I did. Something even Mom doesn't know about. What are you talking about? She glanced back toward the living room where our mother was washing dishes. Not here. Can we go somewhere private? Dad's old drafting room? Chloe, what did you do? Her hands were shaking. The look she gave me held a genuine fear I hadn't seen in her eyes in years. You stopped being invited to family events because I made sure of it. I fed Mom those narratives. False things that made her believe you didn't want to come back at all. I froze entirely. You sabotaged my relationship with her? Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. For 7 whole years. And I need to tell you why. She grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the hallway that led to our father's old workspace. Please, just give me 10 minutes. After that, you can hate me for the rest of your life. I think you have a right to know what you are dealing with. You're right, I said. I do have a right to know. I followed my sister down the hall, past the old photographs, and into my father's study. The place where Arthur used to work, where he wrote the journal entry I still carried with me. I didn't know what Chloe was about to confess, but I knew it was massive enough to break her, and I was about to find out if it was massive enough to break me too. The door to my father's drafting room swung open, and for the first time in 8 years, I stepped inside. Absolutely nothing had changed. My mother had treated this room like a monument to her late husband. In the center sat the massive oak drafting table, its edges smoothed out by decades of use. The leather chair still held the faint indentation of his frame. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with building codes, structural engineering manuals, and his old rock collection. The faint scent of cigar tobacco miraculously lingered, as if he had just stepped out for a moment and would walk back through the door at any second. This was the only room in the house where I had ever felt safe. My father used to let me read in the corner, looking up every now and then to smile at me, as if my presence alone was a gift. After he passed, I couldn't bear to walk in here. Too many ghosts, too much grief. Yet here I was again, preparing to listen to a confession that would likely add even more ghosts to the room. Chloe shut the door and leaned against it. Her hands were trembling so violently she couldn't look me in the eye. She stared at the floor, the desk, anywhere else. "Just let me finish," she said. "Don't interrupt until I am done." "It started about 7 years ago, right after Dad passed away." Her voice was faint. "You had just started your company in Austin," Mom was unraveling, "and I was left in Houston to pick up the pieces. She became completely dependent on me. I became her confidant, her emotional support, her favorite child." I stayed silent, waiting. "That first Thanksgiving after Dad died, you called wanting to come home. I remember telling you that Mom didn't think it was a good time. Because you told her it wasn't a good time." Chloe lowered her voice even further. "I told her that you didn't actually want to come back. I told her you were only asking out of obligation, and that you preferred to stay in Austin." I felt the air leave my lungs. I never said anything like that. "I know." She still wouldn't look at me. "Every single time you reached out to the family, I intercepted it. I twisted your words to make it sound like you were distancing yourself from us. You sent birthday cards, and I told Mom your assistant probably wrote them. You called to check in, and I told Mom you sounded distracted, like you couldn't wait to hang up. I poured poison into the well, drop by drop, year after year. I didn't even realize my hands had clenched into fists at my sides. Why? Why would you do that?" "Because I was terrified of you." "Terrified of me?" "You left, Claire. You broke free. You went after things that were bigger than this house, bigger than this family, bigger than the suffocating expectations of what a perfect sterling woman is supposed to be. And I stayed. I did everything right. I followed the script. I was terrified that if you ever came back and Mom saw who you were becoming, she would realize she had backed the wrong daughter." Chloe walked to the window, turning her back to me. Her voice sounded entirely hollow. "It only got worse. The more successful you appeared, even from a distance, the more I felt the need to diminish you. 3 years ago, when you were featured in Texas Business Weekly, I made sure Mom never saw that magazine. I told her it was just a paid PR piece that startups buy to look important. When Mia started sending you those drawings, I tried to stop her. I told her you were far too busy and would probably just throw them in the trash. But she kept sending them anyway." "I know," I said. Chloe's shoulders slumped. "She is much braver than I ever was. What about the Christmases without me, the family dinners I missed? That was all me. I convinced Mom that you didn't want to be there, that your absence was a choice to abandon us. And she believed it because she wanted to, because believing you abandoned us was psychologically easier than admitting we had pushed you away. I gave her an excuse to give up on you, and she seized it without a second thought. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in on me. 10 years of exclusion, 10 years of self-doubt, wondering what I had done wrong. The answer was standing right in front of me, wearing my sister's face. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I thought my own mother didn't want me anymore. I know, and I am so deeply sorry." "Sorry?" The word came out with a bitter sharpness. "You're sorry, Chloe. I think you know that sorry doesn't fix this. I know nothing I say can ever make up for it." "Then why are you telling me this now? Because I have money? Because you want something from me?" She spun around, her face flushed as if I had struck her. "No, I am telling you because I can't carry it anymore. Seeing you on that screen, seeing the empire you built while I was actively trying to diminish you. Something inside me broke. Good, something inside you should have broken a long time ago." Chloe burst into tears. "Do you want to know why? The real reason? Because I was jealous. Deeply, pathologically jealous. You were always the brilliant child, the one Dad looked at like you hung the moon. Mom chose me because I was manageable, because I was compliant and fit the mold. But Dad chose you. He saw a light in you that he never saw in me, and I hated you for it. I spent my entire life competing with you, Claire, and you didn't even know we were in a race. I got married early because that is what a good daughter does. I had children because that was the next box to check. I stayed close to Mom because someone had to stay, but every single achievement felt like an empty shell because it wasn't what I actually wanted. I wanted to be you. I wanted to be brave enough to leave. Do you know what it feels like to be the favorite child? It is a cage made of solid gold, but it is still a cage. Every choice I made was for Mom's approval. And now I am 34 years old. My husband looks at my sister's wealth like a piece of meat, and I have 2 children I love but barely know because I am always playing the role of the perfect mother. You ran away, I stayed behind, and then I made you pay the price for my own cowardice. Something shifted inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, maybe never. But it was a form of understanding. I realized my sister's cruelty had grown from her own wounds, even if those wounds could never excuse what she had done. But beyond that, I remembered something else, something far worse than a few blocked phone calls. What about 6 years ago? I asked coldly. Chloe froze entirely. When I was trying to secure that crucial business line of credit back in Austin. The approval had already cleared, but at the very last second, the Texas Banking Interbank Association flagged me as a high-risk venture. My funding was almost completely cut off, and David literally had to mortgage his own home just to save the company. I took a step closer to her. That was Blake's doing, wasn't it? Chloe closed her eyes, nodding in pure despair. Yes, I asked him to use his banking connections in Houston to blacklist you. I wanted you to fail. I wanted you to come crawling back with nothing, admitting to all of us that you were wrong, admitting to me that you were wrong. She hadn't just isolated me with gossip and rumors. She had used real systemic power to try and dismantle my entire life's work. You could have left too, Chloe, anytime you wanted. I know. That's the most pathetic part. I chose this prison, but I blamed you for my own lack of freedom. She wiped at the tears streaming down her face, turning toward a nearby bookshelf. There's one more thing. Something I discovered last year. I've been too terrified to face it. What is it? She reached behind a row of old engineering manuals and pulled out a faded yellowed envelope. It bore my father's handwriting. To Chloe, when you are ready. I found it behind the books last year while I was helping Mom look for some old tax documents. I read it, and ever since then, I haven't been able to look at myself in the mirror. With a trembling hand, she passed the envelope to me. I pulled the letter out, a single page covered in my father's familiar script. Before I could speak, Chloe began reading the words aloud in a soft, shaky voice. My dearest Chloe, if you are reading this, I am likely no longer with you. I am so sorry I couldn't say this to you in person. I know you feel like I favored Claire. I know you feel unseen, but I see you, sweetheart. I have always seen you. The difference is, Claire needed my voice because the world would try to strip away hers. You, on the other hand, had your mother's backing, for better or worse. I wanted to balance the scales, but I need you to listen to me closely. Do not compete with your sister. Protect her. She is going to face battles you cannot possibly imagine, and she will need a family that believes in her. Be her ally, not her adversary. This world already has more than enough people trying to tear women down. Do not let this family be one of them. I love you both in different ways, but with the exact same depth. Choose love over fear. Choose your sister. All my love, Dad. Chloe placed the letter onto the oak table, her hands still shaking uncontrollably. He knew. Somehow he foresaw exactly who you would become, and he tried to stop all of this before it even happened. I failed him, Claire. I failed you, and I failed everyone. I picked up the letter, reading it over again, tracing my fingers along my father's handwriting, noticing the exact same loops and lines from the letters he had written to me. He wrote to me too, I said quietly, before he passed. He told me to keep going, to never let anyone dim my light. He believed in both of us, just in different ways. He saw us much more clearly than we ever saw each other. For a moment, we just stood there in our father's study, two sisters holding letters from a man who was no longer here, a man who had tried to save us from tearing each other apart. His words hung between us like a bridge, but also like a ticking clock. A faint sound at the doorway caused us both to freeze. We turned around. Eleanor was standing at the entrance, her face completely pale. Her gaze darted from Chloe's tear-stained face to the letter in my hands, and finally to the empty gap behind the books where the letter had been hidden for years. "What are you two doing in here? What is that?" Chloe instinctively took a step back, the old, deep-seated fear resurfacing even now. I didn't move, and I didn't hide the letter. "It's a letter, Mom. Dad wrote it to Chloe." Eleanor's expression shifted. First came confusion, then recognition of the handwriting, and finally a cold, hard realization. "Where did you find that?" "It was hidden away, just like a lot of things in this house." The three of us stood in Arthur's workspace, the tension in the air heavy enough to cut with a knife. The confession I thought was meant for my ears alone was about to turn into a full-scale reckoning for the entire family, and my mother, the woman who had spent a decade believing I had abandoned her, was about to learn that her favorite daughter was the very person who had torn us apart. Arthur's office was about to become a courtroom, and not a single one of us was innocent. The presence of 3 people made the office feel suffocatingly small. Eleanor stood by the door, her gaze tracking back and forth between her 2 daughters, the atmosphere thick and heavy. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was no longer the imposing matriarch who had spent decades dictating the family narrative, controlling every word and action. Right now, she was just a regular woman forced to confront a disaster she couldn't spin, cover up, or make disappear. "What exactly is going on in here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "What letter? What did your father write?" I met her gaze without flinching. For decades, she was the one who decided who mattered in this house, who got invited, who was spoken about, and how. But right now, standing in her late husband's workspace, surrounded by a truth she couldn't escape, she had absolutely no power left. "Sit down, Mom." "I don't need to sit." "Yes, you do." The sheer weight in my voice stopped her mid-sentence. It was an absolute, unquestionable firmness she had never heard from me before. She sank into Arthur's old leather chair, her hands gripping the armrests tightly, as if bracing for an impact. "Huibi and Chloe has something to tell you, and then all of us are going to have a conversation that is 10 years overdue." Chloe stood by the window, completely unable to look at our mother. Her voice was faint and broken. "Mom, I did something truly terrible, for years." She laid it all out all over again. The intercepted phone calls, the twisted messages, the lies that kept me away from every single holiday for 10 years, and how she had instructed Blake to use his banking network to cut off my business loans. Every single word felt like a stone dropped into stagnant water, the ripples expanding outward, altering everything they touched. As Eleanor listened, the expressions on her face shifted rapidly. First came absolute disbelief. "That's not true, Chloe. That's impossible. You told me Claire didn't want to come home." Then came confusion. "But how could you? A bank loan, how could you even do that?" And finally, a slow, horrifying realization dawned on her. She realized her youngest daughter had been using her as a pawn the entire time. "You lied to your own sister? You lied to me?" Chloe winced, but she didn't back down. "I was trying to protect you, Mom. Claire was always so difficult. I thought everything would be easier without her around." "Easier for who?" My voice cut through the room like a razor. "For you? For Mom? Because it certainly wasn't easy for me." Eleanor looked back and forth between her daughters, her face completely pale. "All these years, all these Christmases, I truly believed she just didn't want us." "You believed what Chloe conditioned you to believe." Eleanor turned to me, something deep within her eyes shattering completely. "Claire, I didn't know. I swear to you, I really didn't know." "Is that true?" I fought to keep my racing heart under control, forcing my voice to remain cold and steady. "Or did you just not want to know?" "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means Chloe lied to you, but you chose to believe her because it was convenient, because dealing with a compliant daughter was much easier than facing a daughter who didn't fit into your carefully constructed blueprint for life." She finally broke down, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. It was a complete, uncharacteristic loss of control. "I never wanted to hurt you, Claire. I just wanted some peace in this family." "You weren't keeping the peace, Mom. You were erasing me. There is a massive difference between the two." Her crying intensified. Watching her fall apart in my father's chair, I felt a complex ache tighten in my chest. It was the residual part of me that had spent a lifetime desperately craving her approval. But I clenched my jaw and remained where I stood, refusing to step forward and comfort her. "Your tears don't change what happened. They don't erase a single day of the entire decade I spent being discarded like trash." "I had no idea things were that bad, I swear. How could you not know? In the beginning, I tried to tell you about my research, my business, what it all meant. You were the one who stopped calling. You were the one who pulled away first. I stopped calling because listening to you talk about those reckless experiments terrified me. I pushed you away because watching you throw everything away to take those massive risks felt like it was going to kill me." "And so you just comfortably convinced yourself that I didn't want to come home? Did you ever once think about driving down to Austin to see me yourself, Mom? Or were you just relieved that I was gone?" The question slammed heavily into the floorboards. She had no answer. There was only weeping, the helpless sound of a woman finally facing the truth she had actively evaded for 10 years. "We aren't done yet." I held up Arthur's letter. "Dad wrote this to Chloe before he passed. She found it hidden behind his engineering manuals. Eleanor reached out a trembling hand. Arthur wrote this to her? He wrote to both of us. He knew, Mom. Somehow he saw all of this coming. She took the paper, her shaking fingers unfolding it. The room fell into absolute silence, save for the faint sound of her breathing as she read. When she finished, she didn't look up. She just stared at the page, as if blinking would make the ink dissolve. He knew. Her voice was barely a whisper. He knew I was ruining everything, that I was failing both of you. She paused on a specific line, her throat tight. She is going to face battles you cannot possibly imagine, and she will need a family that believes in her. She finally raised her eyes to look at me. You faced those battles all by yourself, because I wasn't there. No, you weren't. Claire, I am so deeply sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't give me back the 10 years I spent feeling like a ghost. Eleanor set the letter down and wiped her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, quieter, more broken, but entirely real. Do you want to know why I was so incredibly hard on you? Why I tried so desperately to force you to stay at the real estate company, to force you to choose stability and safety? Yes, I've wanted to know for 10 years. Because I was terrified you would turn out like me. I felt something shift in the room. She had never spoken to me like this before. When I was 23, I had dreams too. She looked down at her hands. I wanted to be an architect. I drew plans, built a portfolio, applied to graduate school. I never knew that. Your grandmother told me it was impractical. Your grandfather said women don't build skyscrapers. Women take care of the home. So I gave up. I married your father, joined his real estate circles, and had the two of you. I don't regret having this family, but I regret surrendering. I regret letting their voices become my own. She looked at me with red, tearful eyes. When you quit your job to pursue that new materials venture, I saw my 23-year-old self. I was terrified to my core. I was terrified that you would fail, just like I did. You didn't fail, Mom. You just gave up. She flinched as if struck by the words. Yes, I gave up, and then I spent decades using the narrative that the safe path is the right path to justify my own surrender. And so you tried to force me onto that exact same path. I thought I was protecting you. You wasn't protecting me, Mom. You were protecting yourself from having to watch me succeed exactly where you chose to surrender. That sentence heavy landed like a sledgehammer. She didn't argue or try to deflect. You're right. Her voice was entirely hollow. I couldn't bear to watch you possess the courage I lacked, so I convinced myself you were reckless, irresponsible, and foolish. When Chloe added to that narrative, I believed her, because I needed to believe her. You needed me to fail. A long, painful silence stretched between us. I suppose there was a dark part of me that did, and I hate myself for it. I walked closer to my mother. I didn't look down on her, but I didn't back away either. Do you have any idea what it feels like to spend an entire decade wondering why your own mother doesn't love you? I do love you, Claire. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's a choice. It means showing up, asking questions, and making space for someone even when they don't fit your expectations. You didn't choose me. You chose a concept, the perfect version of me that would stay in Houston's commercial real estate scene, marry a suitable investment banker, and have 2 kids before 30. When I became someone else, you chose to look away. I took a deep breath. I'm not angry anymore. I spent years being angry, but anger takes too much energy, and I need all of mine to build things that actually matter. What I feel right now is grief. Grief for the relationship we could have had, grief for the mother I desperately wanted but never got, and I've accepted the fact that I cannot change what happened. I can only decide what happens next. Eleanor looked up at me. What does happen next? Can we ever fix this? I don't know, maybe, but definitely not today. What do you need from me right now? I thought about the question. I need you to understand one thing. A tiny sound at the doorway made us all turn around. Mia stood there, her eyes wide, holding a piece of paper, one of her drawings. She had been listening. How much had she heard? Grandma, why are you crying? Mia asked timidly. Aunt Claire, what's going on? I knelt down and opened my arms. Mia ran over, clutching her drawing tightly against her chest. It's okay, sweetie. The grown-ups are just talking about some difficult things. Are you still mad at Mom and Grandma? I looked at Chloe, then at Eleanor. Both of them looked broken, completely raw, waiting to see what I would say. I'm not mad, Mia. I'm just setting the record straight. Mia held up her drawing. I drew this for us. It was a crayon sketch. 4 people were holding hands under a massive rainbow. Grandma, Mom, Aunt Claire, and me. "See, we're all together," Mia said, "because that's how a family is supposed to be." It was so simple, so full of hope, the incredible innocence of a child who still believed in happy endings. I stood up, keeping hold of Mia's hand, and turned to face my mother. "I don't need your approval anymore, Mom. I stopped needing it the day I realized I could build my own life. But Mia is only 9 years old. She still needs a grandmother who will show up, a family that won't hide the truth, and an environment that won't erase people just because they don't fit the mold. I'm not asking you to immediately fix what's broken between us. I am asking you not to break her." Eleanor stared at the drawing in Mia's hands, looking at the 4 little figures holding hands under the rainbow. "I won't," she said softly. "I promise you, Claire, I absolutely won't." A promise from my mother had never carried much weight before, but Mia was watching, and maybe that was enough to make this one stick. The reckoning was far from over. But for the first time in 10 years, we were standing in the same room, facing the truth. What we chose to do with that truth next would determine everything. 3 months passed. March arrived in Austin with melting snow and pale sunshine, bringing the first hints of spring into the winter gray. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new penthouse apartment, looking out over the city where I had built my empire, watching the world slowly wake up. From up here, everything looked different. The streets where I once felt entirely invisible now stretched out like a map of endless possibilities. The skyline I had spent countless lonely nights staring at now felt like something I had earned the right to claim. 3 months. It had been 3 months since the trip to Houston, since the reckoning in my father's study. The news cycle had long since moved on. The media found new billionaires to praise, new scandals to dissect, and new stories to tell. But within our own family, everything was slowly reshaping, settling into a new form. People asked me if the money changed my life. Yes, it did, but not in the way they expected. The penthouse is wonderful, and the financial freedom is even better, but the real change is quiet, slow, and hard to quantify. For the first time in 10 years, I don't feel a sudden dread when my phone lights up with a family member's name. We aren't healed yet, but we are trying. And trying, I've come to realize, is a brand new beginning in itself. 2 weeks after I returned to Austin, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten note on high-end cream-colored stationery. My mother's handwriting was careful, each stroke deliberate. It was the handwriting of a woman raised in an era when letters truly meant something. I stood in my kitchen and opened it, unsure of what I would read. "Dear Claire," the letter began. "I drafted this 15 times. Every time I tried to defend myself, but every time I realized a defense isn't what you need. So I will just say this. I am sorry. Not a conditional apology, not an apology with a but attached, just a pure apology. As a mother, I failed completely. I let my own fears become your obstacles. I chose to believe lies because they were easier to face than the truth. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not even sure I deserve it. But I want you to know that I finally, completely see you now. Your father was entirely right about you. You accomplished something incredible, and I was too blind to watch it happen. I love you. I have always loved you, even when I behaved terribly. I hope one day you can believe that. Mom." I read that letter 3 times. Then I placed it inside the walnut box that held my father's journals. I didn't write back, at least not yet. But I didn't throw it away either. It was the first completely honest thing my mother had said to me in years. I wasn't ready to trust it fully, but I was willing to keep it. Chloe started calling me every Thursday evening. The calls weren't long, usually lasting about 15 minutes, sometimes 20. There was no agenda, no manipulation, just conversation. "How is work?" Mia learned a new piano piece. "I tried that Texas brisket recipe you mentioned last time." The dialogue was always a bit awkward and stiff, like 2 strangers trying to speak a language they should have known by heart. We aren't true sisters yet, but we are practicing. 6 weeks after the trip to Houston, Chloe called with a different kind of update. Her voice sounded lighter and, in a way, liberated. "Blake moved out," she said. I paused, unsure of how to respond. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you okay?" "To be honest?" "I feel relieved," she told me, explaining what happened. "He flew into a rage over everything. My confession to you, what happened in Houston and the fact that I didn't try to capitalize on your success." "Capitalize," I repeated the word. He kept talking about how we needed to leverage the family connection, saying I wasted a massive opportunity. He saw you as a resource, Claire, an asset to be managed. When I refused to cooperate, he decided I was no longer worth the investment. I let that sink in. Blake had never viewed me as family, and even Chloe was just a tool to maintain his perfect image and gain leverage. The moment Chloe refused to be his accomplice in exploiting me, he cut his losses and walked away. Do you want to know the most ridiculous part? Chloe continued. I married him because Mom approved, because he was stable, successful, and fit everything a sterling woman was supposed to want. And now I'm realizing I wasted 10 years in a marriage that was entirely about appearances and never about love. I was so busy trying to be the perfect daughter that I forgot to ask myself if I was actually happy. Are you happy now? I asked. A long silence followed. I'm slowly finding myself again. For the first time in my life, I'm making choices for me. It's terrifying, but it's also wonderful. Claire, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How did you do it back then? How did you leave behind everything safe and expected and bet everything on yourself? I didn't have a choice. If I stayed, the suffocating routine would have killed me much slower and more painfully than failure ever could. I think I finally understand now. Well, then you are much braver than you think, Chloe. The other end of the line went quiet. Then, a very soft voice came through. Thank you for not hating me. I never hated you. I just didn't know you before. Maybe now I can start. Every Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock Austin time, Mia's face would light up my screen. It became the anchor of my week. Those video calls were a constant reminder that all the arguments, all the healing, and all the rebuilding were worth it. Mia would show me her new piano pieces, her small fingers carefully navigating the keys as she practiced her scales. She would hold her hamster, Snowball, up to the camera so I could see his twitching nose. She would read passages from the books she just finished, her voice full of excitement with every plot twist. Aunt Claire, did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts? 3! Why don't we have 3 hearts? I think 1 heart is already complicated enough, sweetie. She sends me new drawings every month now, and they aren't secrets hidden from her parents anymore. There was a drawing of me standing at a podium with a caption that read, "You talking to smart people." There was a drawing of us in a kitchen, waiting for you to visit so we can bake chocolate chip cookies. And there was a drawing of the night sky, with 2 stars circled. This star is Grandpa Arthur watching us change the world, and this star is me sending you love. In February, I held a press conference. Cameras flashed and reporters gathered in the lobby of TerraCorp's regional headquarters in Austin. David stood right beside me as I stepped up to the podium. Today, I am officially announcing the establishment of the Arthur Sterling Foundation for Women in STEM, I said. My father believed in me when nobody else did. He told me that I was meant to build something extraordinary. This foundation is designed to ensure that other women, daughters, sisters, and those who have been marginalized can hear that exact same message. Because sometimes having just one person believe in you is enough to change everything. After the press conference, David handed me a folder. The board wants you to take a look at this. The construction on the new Research and Development Center is nearly complete. Inside were the blueprints for a new structure within the TerraCorp campus. The signage above the main entrance read, "The Arthur Sterling Advanced Materials Innovation Laboratory." You named it after him? You earned this, Claire. It was a condition in your initial agreement. I ran my fingers over the image, tracing my father's name embossed in brass letters across a building dedicated to the very green science he always believed I would master. He should have been here to see this in person. Every time you walk through those doors, he will be, David said softly. In early March, Professor Sarah Jenkins called. Her voice carried the exact same warmth it had on that afternoon 12 years ago when she first sat me down in her office. Claire, she said, MIT wants you to deliver the keynote address for our East Coast Women in Green Tech conference. Me? The woman who survived on a journal full of formulas? Sarah, I am no good at public speaking. You are now. This is a story that needs to be told. There are so many young women out there who need to hear it. The auditorium was filled with 400 people. The back wall was lined with cameras, and media badges caught the glint of the house lights. Standing at the podium, my heart raced, but my voice remained remarkably steady. I told them the truth. I spoke about the years of doubt, the family that didn't believe in me, and the countless nights spent completely alone, questioning the sanity of walking away from everything. Success isn't about proving anyone wrong, I said into the microphone. Success is about proving yourself right. It is about choosing to listen to your own voice above all the noise. If you are sitting out there right now, doubting if you are good enough, smart enough, or brave enough, you are, I promise you, you are more than enough. The standing ovation lasted for 2 full minutes. Sarah sat in the front row, wiping away tears. After the lecture, a young woman walked up to me. She was in her early 20s, visibly nervous, clutching a notebook to her chest like a lifeline. "Ms. Sterling, I'm applying for your scholarship. I just wanted to say, my family thinks studying sustainable materials is a waste of time. They keep telling me to go find a real job. Your story made me feel like I'm not completely alone anymore." I took her hand. "What is your name?" "Grace." "Grace, don't let anyone convince you to be small. The world needs what you are building. I believe in you." She burst into tears and I pulled her into a hug. That was why all of this mattered. It was entirely for moments like this. By late June, the Austin summer arrived with humid evening breezes and long golden sunsets. I came home from the office, exhausted but completely fulfilled. Walking down the hallway outside my penthouse apartment, I reached for my keys and stopped. Someone was sitting on the bench outside my door. She looked different. Older, smaller, and entirely uncertain. There was no sophisticated silk blouse and no rehearsed flawless smile. It was just a woman who had flown nearly 3 hours without calling ahead. My mother. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Eleanor stood up slowly, her hands twisting in front of her like a child called to the principal's office. "I know I should have called first. I know you need space. But I had to come." "Why?" "Because I have lived 65 years out of fear. I decided that I don't want to leave this world with my oldest daughter believing that I didn't try to stand up for her, not even once." I looked at her. The woman who had caused so much pain, who had missed out on so much time, standing here uninvited and completely terrified. It didn't mean instant forgiveness. Perhaps the past would never be entirely erased, but it was a shift, a mother finally choosing to show up. I opened the door. "Come inside, Mom. I'll make you some tea." She stepped inside. For the first time in 10 years, she was truly welcome in my life. My mother stayed for 3 days. We didn't try to force a deep repair, and we didn't rush. The first day was spent mostly in silence, 2 women learning how to breathe in the same room without being crushed by the weight of expectations. On the second day, she asked to see my company. She walked through the corridors of AeroBuild, looking at the patent certificates on the walls and touching the samples of storm-resistant siding her daughter had formulated. "I had no idea," she whispered. "I had absolutely no idea what you were actually doing." "You never asked." "I know, I'm asking now. Tell me everything." So, I told her. For 3 hours I spoke about the early struggles, the investors who rejected me, the nights I nearly threw it all away, and the molecular breakthrough that changed everything. She listened, truly listened, for the first time in 38 years. "Your father knew," she said when I finished. "Somehow he always knew who you would become. He believed when nobody else did. I should have believed too. I am so sorry, Claire." "I know, Mom, I know." December arrived once again. A full year had passed since the news broke the world, and a year since my mother's trembling voice asked over the phone, "Is that really you?" But this Christmas was different. For the first time, my Austin penthouse was decorated. A real fir tree stood in the corner, covered in lights, filling the air with the scent of pine and cinnamon. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The guest list was small but meaningful. David Vance and his wife with their grandchildren running around the living room. Professor Sarah Jenkins, 71 years old and sharp as ever, arguing about polymer kinetics over red wine. And 3 of my original AeroBuild colleagues who had long since become my chosen family. Around noon, the elevator doors slid open. Eleanor, Chloe, and Mia stepped out. My mother carried a massive roasting pan. "I used your grandmother's Texas brisket recipe," she said. "It was Arthur's favorite." Chloe stood beside her, looking lighter than I had ever seen her. There was no Blake, no luxury labels used as a shield, just her. Mia didn't wait for anyone to speak before launching herself into my arms. "Aunt Claire, Merry Christmas! I brought 17 drawings this time, and a special gift I made myself." After lunch, Mia pulled me aside. Her face wore that absolute intense seriousness that only a child can muster. "Aunt Claire, I have something special for you. I worked on it for a whole month." She handed me a large envelope decorated with stars and hearts. The drawing inside was much more mature than her earlier work. She was growing up. The picture showed 2 people standing side by side. One was me, with my curly hair and a wide smile, holding a rolled-up set of engineering blueprints. The other was a man with graying hair and incredibly kind eyes. My father. Above them, in neat handwriting, Mia had written, "Grandpa Arthur watching Aunt Claire change the world." And below that, "I know he is proud of you, because I am proud of you too." My hands shook as I held the paper. A child not even 10 years old understood what adults had spent a decade failing to see. "Sweetie, this is beautiful. Do you like it?" I tried really hard to make Grandpa look like he does in the pictures. Mom helped me find them. I looked up and caught Chloe watching me from across the room. My sister gave me a small, weighted nod. "I love it, Mia." "More than you know," I said, holding her close. "Aunt Claire, can you promise me something?" "Anything. Promise me you'll always be in my life. Even when I grow up and even when I'm as old as Grandma." I laughed through my tears. "I promise, Mia, I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because you're my favorite person. Don't tell Mom." "Your secret is entirely safe with me." Late that night, after the guests had left or settled into the spare rooms, I stood alone by the window, looking at the blinking lights of Austin below. I held Mia's drawing in my hands, and behind me on the table sat my father's letter, soft from being read so many times. A year ago, I was a billionaire who felt like she had nothing. Today, the numbers in the bank account were exactly the same, but everything else had changed. My mother and I speak every week. Sometimes it's still awkward, and old scars can still sting, but we are communicating. Chloe is finding herself, finally enrolling in the independent design courses she dreamed about, chasing the creativity she buried for decades. And Mia is thriving, never having to hide her affection from anyone ever again. I looked down at the drawing of my father smiling at me. I used to think that success would make them see me. I thought achievements could buy their affection. I was wrong. Achievements only buy attention. What truly reshaped us was showing up, honesty, and choosing to stay in the room even when it hurts. "Dad, I hope you can see this. I hope you know we are trying." I touched the paper, tracing the crayon smile. I think he knew. I think he always knew we would find our way back. I spent 38 years trying to extract love from people who weren't ready to give it. I built a billion-dollar empire in the dark, stubbornly believing that eventually the noise of that success would be loud enough for them to hear. But what I learned is this: you cannot force someone to see you. You can only keep standing firmly in your own truth until the right people notice your light. If you are listening to this story and you feel invisible to your family, your colleagues, or the world, I want you to know one thing. Your worth is not defined by who notices you. It is defined by who you choose to be. The people who diminish you, who minimize you, they aren't your audience. They are just noise. Keep building, keep believing, and keep choosing yourself. One day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, the right people will see you, and they will wonder how they ever looked away. My father wrote me a letter before he passed. He said, "You are meant to build something extraordinary." He was right. But the extraordinary thing wasn't the company, and it wasn't the money. It was the moment I finally understood that with or without anyone's approval, I am already enough. That is the real success story. Everything else is just detail. That is my story. The complete truth with absolutely nothing left behind. A daughter who was once told she was worth nothing. A family that finally realized, at the very last second, exactly what they had almost lost. And a woman who built an empire in the dark, only to find her own voice the moment she stopped trying to prove herself to anyone. If this story touched you, and if you saw a reflection of your own life in any part of it, I want to hear from you. Please leave a comment down below and tell me what silent battles you are fighting right now. What are you building in the dark that the world hasn't noticed yet? And tell me where you are listening from too. I read every single comment, and your stories mean the absolute world to me. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. Every single week I share stories just like this one. Stories about everyday people who refuse to stay invisible, fighting hard to let their light shine. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next video. And if you know someone who needs to hear these exact words right now, a daughter who feels overlooked, a mother who needs to learn how to truly listen, or anyone fighting a silent battle of their own, please share this story with them. Sometimes just a single story is enough to remind someone that they aren't completely alone. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end, and thank you for witnessing my journey. Now, go out there and build your own empire. The world is waiting to see exactly who you choose to be. And even if nobody else believes in you right now, I do. I will see you in the next one. This story was dramatized for creative purposes.